Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second live episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. As always, Zach here with my brother from another mother, Mr. Clint Bartley. Clint has had a very busy week. He just got back from Tinley, which is a small show, not that big a deal, right?
Something like that.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit about Bud.
Tinley, it's good. It's, I will say anyone who went to Tinley, this last one will probably tell you it was what we would consider a slower Tinley in terms of attendance. Now, it's funny because when I say slower in terms of attendance, that doesn't mean this is any kind of slow show or dead show or anything like that. It's still massive, and there are tons of people through there. And it's still a good show overall. So not throwing shade in any way. It was just from sometimes you have these huge numbers where I've seen the line wrapping around the building and 100,000 people it feels like. But yeah, it was a great time. Tinley is an opportunity for me because I get to see friends that I don't see really any other time but Tinley from different areas of the country. And it's ball python breeders that I'm friends with. It's monitor breeders that I'm friends with. It's, there's some people that like you and I talked to out at the reptile talks in Anaheim. Is that where we were?
Anaheim. Yeah.
Like Mike's monitors, I see him out there. So it's definitely a good time and I had a blast. This was Ox's first Tinley. He's never been to a Tinley, so he got to go, experience all of that, and he had a real good time, did a real good job. It was great, and it's, for me, on top of meeting the friends, or seeing the friends, and it's funny I said meeting because that's something we'll talk about in a minute, but seeing friends, and it's generally a good sales show, obviously. Sure. There's a nice financial piece that goes to it. But with everything we're doing now, meaning Metazotics as a company, CCR, and what we have as our goals with both the show and with the conservation fund and a lot of things we're doing there, Tinley is probably my greatest networking show. Because of the big people that are there that have, things that we're able to then discuss and kind of get some things rolling, which, as you heard on my phone call. I think it was funny. So I call Zach on the ride home from Tinley, and I'm like, okay, I've got 4 things. And I start, and as I roll them all out, when he says to me, I always look forward to the post-Tinley phone call. Because I'm thinking, well, what are we about to be doing now? Because there's always something. And sure enough, we had some nice pieces that came about. That
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Something. One piece could help out Colubrid Fest and the Conservation Fund. Another piece with I can't forgive us, everyone. I know you hate it when we do this, but we have a killer conservation piece that we're working on in the background that we can't announce
Very
yet.
Much.
But when we can, we will obviously let everyone know about it. But I was able to kind of link something to that. Yeah, that's going to help us out tremendously on the science side of this conservation piece. So that was really exciting. Really, really exciting. Yeah. It's a good time. I'm going to make a quick comparison because this did come up. Obviously, I talk about Colubrid Fest a ton when I'm at Tinley because people are asking us about it, right? And when we were talking, I was talking to someone who went to the last Colubrid Fest, and he was at, I asked me about Tinley and what my thoughts were there, and through the conversation, there came a part where we realized one of the differences between Tinley and Colubrid Fest. And obviously that, you got Colubrid, you got everything. You have, there's tons of differences, but I'm always excited to go to Tinley and I am excited to go to Colubrid Fest, right? But the difference is when you go to Tinley, just like when you go to Daytona, for those who don't go to Tinley, but you go to Daytona, you're going to say you get to see a bunch of your friends, right? Well, you go to Daytona or Tinley and you see your friends, and that's who you're with. You go to dinner with that group. You hang out with that group. You go to the bar with that group, right? And I think the difference is you go to Tinley to see your friends, you go to Colubrid Fest and you make new friends.
Exactly.
That was the biggest difference in that piece of those two, or is that right there? And it's like, and they're both great. It's both fine, but that was one of the things is you're not just going to go off with one small pocket of Colubrid, at Colubrid Fest like you do at Tinley. Colubrid Fest, you're going to be talking to a lot of people that you may have never met before, and you're going to have a blast with it. So it was good. It was good.
Good.
I met it, and sorry, I'm going long on it, but as far as kind of, more of a Tinley recap, I got to meet individual named Matt, who's the owner of the Tie-Dyed Iguana. For those of you who have heard of that, it's a fantastic shop right outside of St. Louis, and man, we hit it off great. Really like that guy. Really like him. And there's a lot of things that he and I are looking at kind of, working out together. And luckily, there's less than 3 hours from here. So, it's maybe some collaboration going on. We'll see. I also, as far as pickups, I did pick up, let's see, I picked up some more gray bands. I know, shock face, right?
Of course you did.
So
if alternatives there, you'll buy them. Like that's the way it works.
And Jason Hood beat me to an adult pair. I didn't see him until they were already sitting behind his table, and he wasn't at his table as I was walking by, but Billy was. And I'm like, what's he got back there, Billy? Let me see that. And so, yeah, sure enough, he beat me to it. But picked up some Alterna. Let's see, picked up, so first time, 2.3 rubber boas.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, I had pre-purchased those.
Okay.
And so, he had got them delivered there were no other rubber boas anywhere in the building. And that I saw. And it was funny because the individual I bought them from, these are yearlings, and someone who had gotten one from him last year needed a male and went up to him looking for a male. And he says, Clint's got all of them. So I got these things right behind me sitting there. He walks up, I really need a male rubber boa. I'm like, so it's like, all right, listen, I haven't even opened the lid on these things yet.
Yeah.
But Mike, if you understand that, I'm happy to get you taken care of. So I was able to take care of somebody immediately. And, forgive me, guys. I promise I'm not generally a flipper, but I made sure this individual understood fully. I literally got these to take these home, and so. But
let me ask a quick question.
Yep.
How much of that purchase had to do with you seeing them in the wild in California?
Oh, 100%.
Nice.
Okay. Let me say this. I guess if I'm going to be honest, 95%. 95% was seeing it in the wild. The other 5% is when I went online to see if what I was paying was a good price, which very much was. And I've learned that there was not a single one available anywhere. That was the other 5%. Boom. That was like, yeah, yep. I'm gonna go ahead and get those. Absolutely.
Nice.
So that was good. I will report that there is now a native. We're going to go ahead and say it's native radiated rat snake in Tinley Park. Somehow one of these things popped the lid, and it was 3 levels down. And this is like a 5-foot pissy thing, and I never found it. It's somewhere in the convention center. So, whoops. Yeah, sorry guys. I did my best.
There you go. Well, some mice will die. So
that's right. Yeah. So I'm just, if somebody found it, I'm sure they went home with it. I mean, it was awesome looking radiated rat. So, but yeah, it was like I said, great time. And looking forward to doing it again. Get to see a bunch of the regulars. Got to talk to Matt Wayne was out there. Love that guy. Todd from Timberline. Talked to Zirkle, Eric Westmoreland. I mean, on and on and on and on and on. There's so many people I can name on this. So always good time.
Beautiful.
So, how was your weekend, man? How's it been since our last episode?
I'm only opening a freaking conservation center that started to be built in 2019 on the 23rd, which is a week and 2 days from now, so 9 days away from our opening. So this is what's really funny about this situation. I actually had my animal care staff like call me out on this. They were like, "Why are you so calm? Everyone around me is freaking the blank out. We're not going to hit the deadline." I mean, there's like literally, I've got, to put in perspective, I think there's 6 tons of gravel in my parking lot where we're literally going to be putting the ribbon that we're cutting. But I got 20 somethings and we're going to move that 6 tons of gravel tomorrow in about an hour. So, it's big deal, big day. I am insanely proud of my team at West Liberty, which includes my animal care staff, my grad students, my undergrads. They have worked their asses off. We inherited the building in July. I was supposed to have inherited the building the previous July. Okay. And my crew is the only crew that's gotten anything done before deadline. So we are, kicking ass, taking names, so many turtle systems. I can't wait for you to inevitably get up here and see where the product from Metazotics has gone.
I'm stoked, man. I'm stoked.
But yeah, we have the capacity, not that we're doing it, but we have the capacity to hold up to 100 plus emitted turtles in this lab. We got our spotted turtles in I've even lost track of time. A couple weeks ago or last week, a couple weeks ago, that's right. And they're in rough shape because of the conditions that we got them from. And so my animal care staff, Tanya, who you've met, she's been literally medicating these things, getting them back to health on top of getting all the buildings built. We've got enclosures being built. But yeah, I'm just not going to sleep for the next 9 days. I have never wanted something to be checked off as much in the recent present, as much as this opening. I feel like we can't actually do the conservation until this necessary evil is done. So it's kind of like, I view it as like we're cutting that ribbon and then we actually get to do what we built the thing for, if that makes any sense at all. So I have to cut the ribbon at 2:00 on the 23rd. And then I give an hour-long "How the hell did we get here" presentation, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm going to be making that over the weekend. But that's pretty much my life. It's just getting the students, my staff, me, everybody to the finish line with this building. So expect lots of pictures, videos, reels, everything dropping from West Liberty next week. Yeah, there's definitely going to be some snakes being produced there, but more on that at a later point in time. So it is relevant to our podcast, which is pretty, awesome. And other than that, I've been finalizing the Pitcha-Ophis takeover of the collection. I've learned a lot from our show, and it's really funny how this is my 3rd revision, and I think I'm done. And I actually do think I'm done. Like, I don't really feel a need. It's been kind of nice to get rid of animals and that whole get rid of 3, bring on 1 ratio I talked about. I like it. I'm able to do a little bit better care. I'm going to be getting the new ARS racks over the wintertime. So all that. But I have stumbled outside of the realm of colubrids because I was thinking about, like, I have bucket list taxa I want to say I bred. And one of them is like, it's like that relationship that you should not have, that you always go back to, and then it literally bites you in the ass. And so one of those species are yellow anacondas. I have to make yellow anacondas before I die. I've tried twice. And so I picked up a small female that I'm raising. This is like a long game kind of deal. I have the space, I have the enclosures, and one of my offices up at work. So there you go. And then the other taxa for me were blood pythons. I just love blood pythons. Yet another brown snake. They are reddish, but and so I now have 2.2 subadults. I didn't want to deal with raising them, and I got a story to tell, and then we'll get on with our stuff because I feel like this is the way this should be handled. So anybody that listens to our show knows one of my number one complaints about private herpetoculture is if you sell a snake, you should be able to sex a snake. And I can sex a mother effing snake. So when I get a snake, in fact, look, this is my probe kit sits right next to my desk. So every animal that's onboarded to the private collection, very first thing that I do, check it for mites, have a quarantine space, and then I probe it. And so I had gone back and forth with this guy. To his absolute credit, he said, breeder I bought it from said it was a female. I can't probe. I don't know. And I rolled the dice, got this blood in, and sure enough, it's like definitely a male. I probed it, and it went 9 subcaudals, and with them, you get above 5, it's male. And so I thought, oh well, it happened again. But then I was like, no, I'm going to actually message this guy. So I politely messaged the guy, and then he responded with, "Hey, I'm really sorry about that. I have a couple females. Maybe we can work something out." And so he sold me a proven young female. So we know it's female, laid eggs at I still paid him for it. I don't mind paying for it, and it was discounted. And the whole transaction was just like, this is the way this should be handled. Because in the past, when I have said, hey, it's a female or it's a male, sorry, I always get, no, it isn't. Or, people push back. So that was just nice to, and then now I'm getting another snake tomorrow. So, and that'll complete the 2.2 and we'll move on from there. So, but no, that's pretty much it for me. It's just this opening is ruling my life. Today, I went from campus to Lowe's, bought a bunch of fence posts that are going to be part of the indoor turtle pen. Bought a bunch of bricks. I'm buying like the most random crap on earth. Bought a bunch of furniture on Wayfair. Because my dean was like, there's no furniture in the lobby. And I was like, well, we're going to put tanks in the lobby. And she was like, no, you can't decorate with tanks. I was like, what do you think we're doing? It's a conservation center for crying out. So I relented and I let my dean, who also happens to be one of my best friends, I was like, here's my computer. Here's your budget. Order the furniture. And so we've got that check. It's done. So anyway, nice. But it's been interesting. It's been a little tiring, manic, but I do have to say I'm actually enjoying this process. Like I cannot wait until it's done. Now we can move on, and that's happened next week. So that's all I have.
That's awesome.
I'm gonna hijack this show a little bit.
Oh no!
Show that we got Kirill here from all the way over wherever he is. I don't know how he's staying. Yeah. I don't know how he's staying up for this, but yeah, Joe.
We always appreciate you.
He wants to make it out to Tinley next year.
That's Joe from Meteoric Serpents and the Colubrid Corruption podcast. Going to be at Tinley. Looking forward to it, Joe.
We got Mike considering leaving his child at football game.
I'm Mike Larson. Great guy.
Let's see. We got some Bartley blood in the chat. We got Todd saying he met you at Tinley.
Yep, absolutely. Real quick story about that. So Todd's son, he came up to me, and this was a prime example of what we said that Colubrid Fest is supposed to be about. He told me how great of a time he had. Todd's son did, and he said, I'm a gecko guy. I never had colubrids, or he didn't have them. I think he said he never had them. And he says that he goes, I came because my dad kind of was like, come on, you really need to come check this out. And he goes, I left there having a blast and with my first garter snakes. And, I thought that's what we say. It's not about excluding anybody. It's saying, come see why we love this so much. And just like just a second ago, Zach, when you're talking about wanting to breed things outside of colubrids to, check them off your list, like we always say, we're not on this show because we don't like other things. we're here because we love colubrids and want to, share that.
Yeah.
So
I got the ultimate example of that. So I bet on the, I don't even know what the hell they are. Pinstripe, het, pied, whatever the hell, female ball pythons in the auction.
Mm-hmm.
And I got those because my son likes ball pythons. That was why. And, 2 snakes, they didn't go that high, whatever. And driving home from Colubrid Fest, I was thinking about those freaking ball pythons more than the colubrids I had bought because I'd already been thinking about it a long time. And I distinctly remember walking into the All Ohio Reptile Show when I was probably 20 in Columbus. I went to Don Hamper's table, if you know who that is, and I saw my first pied ball python. Now you can't go to a show and not see a pied ball python.
Mm-hmm.
But I even remember where it was in the building, and very few snakes have had that effect on me in a show. And I was like, you know what? I'm getting a pied male ball python. And that was the first snake I bought after Colubrid Fest. Was a male pied ball python because I suck at breeding ball pythons. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And Colin and I are going to have fun doing it because he likes those guys. So
I can't blame you. I can't blame you on that one because to this day, every time we do a reptile event from Metazotics where we're going to go do a birthday party or a presentation at some organization or something like that, sometimes I'll take a big rat snake. Sometimes I'll take, this one king snake, or sometimes it's this cresty, or there's only 2 things I take every single time. Sriracha, the big bearded dragon we have here that everybody loves, and he's so gentle and gorgeous. And I always take a pied ball python.
There you go.
The pied ball python is the last thing I pull out because it's the finale. It's because when you pull a pied ball python out to a group of people that are not hardcore reptile people, they just either they like them or they're new to them. But you pull that out and you get gasps. Throughout the audience.
The only thing I'll say is it was extremely hard to find just a pied ball python.
Not multi-gene. Yeah.
It was like this and this. And I'm like, I just want a pied ball python. And I found one. It was $175. It was a proven male.
Wow.
He's in quarantine currently. But I also thought it was really funny that it was $175. And I distinctly remember that snake I saw was over $10,000 when I saw it back in 2000 or 1999 or whenever the hell that was. So anyway. Okay.
I get it.
Well, do you want to move on to the market update?
Well, I was going to say, do you want to do the science first? Because the market's going to be the big one tonight. If you want to start with science, you want me? I can go first if you want. It's up to you.
Well, why don't you go first? Because I can make mine short or long.
Gotcha. You got it. All right. Well, I'm going to pop this up here. So this is going to be the larger market update because we're going to go over some numbers, go over some graphs, and talk about kind of what the trend is and what we're seeing here. So as of right now, let me pull this up for me. We are seeing, let's go ahead and line it out here. So here's our ball python trend.
You sponsors our market update?
I'm thrown off because of the live. I'm going to blame the live. Yeah, right. Market update, as always, is sponsored by the Show Me Reptile Show and the Show Me Marketplace. As always, we tell you, if there's a Show Me show anywhere near you, check them out. Give them some support. Support those that support us. And by supporting us, I mean those in the colubrid community. Because as we all know, Mickey and the Show Me team, they're the ones that fund the bill when it comes to Colubrid Fest. So Colubrid Fest would not happen if it wasn't for Show Me. So please go give them some love. Okay.
There we go.
So here we've got our ball python trend. And, for those who can't see this, in short, we're seeing that trend going from January 1st of 2024 to now. It's subtly, now you've got your peaks and valleys, but it continues to move in a downward direction. And we're going to go over some specific numbers in a minute. But what I'm looking at here is we've historically watched that same trend take place with the total number of listings on Morph Market of snakes in general, because the ball pythons make up such a large percentage. You do see that. But what I want to point out is this right here. Look at the separation that is starting to take place, where we are still seeing the total number grow, and we're seeing that total number growing at a more rapid pace than we're seeing ball pythons as far as overall listings. And when I say grow, it's not higher than what it was, like last December, but that gap, we're getting a gap in between those two. And that's interesting. We're going to talk a little more about that. But to put this in perspective and give some actual numbers, there are currently 34,125 ball pythons listed versus 38,516 the same time last year. So we're seeing a 4,400 dip, in ball python listings year over year. Interesting. That's probably a good thing. That is a good thing for the market overall in terms of this species because of historically how many we've had. Total listings are at 52,800 versus 55,100 last year. So again, overall, we've got, 4,400 more fewer ball pythons, but we've got 2,300 fewer total listings, which means we've got more listings happening in other species. And we'll take a little bit look at that. So let's look at the colubrid listings now. Since tracking bulls and pines, we can see a nice uptick in them. We'll go over specific numbers, but basically when we started tracking this back in January, they were probably sitting somewhere around 400. Right now, there's about 750 listed. Corn snakes. This is, again, the second highest as far as market share. We saw where they peaked during this time, really. Last year, it was November is when they peaked just over 2,500 listed. Dipped all the way down in June to about 1,200 listed, and now have bounced back up to getting close to 3,000 listed. Yeah, we're at a bigger peak, than even October of last year. It looks like they were somewhere around 2,400. So big jump there. Here's garters. As we can see, they're still very, very low. Hognose. Yeah, we're going to need to talk about that. So hognose follows typically about the same pattern that the corn snakes do, but higher. And to kind of put it in perspective, right now, and I'll give the exact numbers, but I want to say it's somewhere around 37. It's 3,800 even, I think. 3,800 hognose snakes are currently listed when October of last year, it was 2,800. So we have 1,000 more. I mean, that we're looking at almost close to 30% increase, 33% increase in 1 year. That's something huge when you're already talking about the number one colubrid species by market share. So interesting. But let's keep looking. As we go, we've got house snakes. They're even fewer. This is just, and I mean, I'm seeing why. I saw, was it Warren out at Tinley? And I mean, I saw a lot of empty holes on his display, where things are selling. So I'm not surprised at all that we continue to see fewer of those listed because they're selling and there's so few people producing them in comparison. Kings have a little dip here. And I know for those who can't see this, I will be going over the numbers in a minute, so you'll be able to hear exactly what we're looking at. But they dip, they're on the incline, and really most you're going to see going up at this point because everything's hatched out, everything's now feeding, things are getting listed. There's the milks, rat snakes, other colubrids. This is what I want to point out right here. Corn snakes and hognose snakes, the top two in terms of available colubrids by number, and those that have the largest market share. When you look at each of these from October of last year compared to October of this year, we're seeing an increase in number of animals listed. Now, when we look at these at this lower end, so basically anything that's not those two species, having more listed right now, that's a good thing. That's showing that market is increasing. We're having more people working with them, more people producing them. And while you think, well, that's going to flood the market, no, more people working and producing whenever we're at this low of a number is going to create more passion for that species, and you're going to get more people involved, and those markets still have tons of room for growth. What scares me on these is when they were all, the corn snakes specifically. So corn snakes these have been around. They've been the most popular species for years and years prior to like hognose taking over. So for those to be increasing year over year with the number of available, that gets me a little nervous, with potential saturation, in that market. Not saying the corn market's dead, nothing like that. Not telling anybody don't buy corn snakes, don't breed corn snakes, or don't get into corn snakes. That is not what I'm saying. Basically, what I'm just looking at here is if you are in that market, just know that you're going to need to get a little more creative with your marketing. You're going to need to work a little harder at the shows. You're probably going to want to evaluate what mutations and morphs you're working with and keep an eye on your price points. All those, to continue moving in that direction. Hognose, wow. That's a big jump in 1 year, on the number that are listed. So same thing, can't say that's saturated yet because we see ball pythons got all the way into the 50,000s, 60,000s, being listed. And, it kept growing until it really hit that point. So I don't know what the actual growth saturation point is for hognose. It could be 8 times this number before it actually starts to slow down. It's just, again, something to be cognizant of and to know that, when working with these and putting these on a table, you're going to be putting these on a table that, there's going to be a lot of other tables that are going to look similar, in shows. But again, good stuff. So let's keep moving. Market share. This was interesting. So ball pythons are down to 64%. And remember, they were at 80, right at 80 when we started tracking this. Colubrids were at, I think, as low as 11, and they've now moved up to 20% of the market share. Boas are at 11%, other pythons at 5%. As far as some changes that we've seen in the market, so ball pythons have, from September to October, they increased 1,259, so we have another 1,200 listed, but their market share percent went from 66.6 to 64.6, so they lost 2 points, in the market. Other pythons, we had 410 more listed in October. They had, 4.6% of the market up to 5% of the market, so they had a 0.5 point increase. We've got boas. They were 10.7% in September. They are 10.7% in October, and that is with an increase of 329. Colubrids had an increase of 1,480 that are listed. There's currently 10,395 colubrids listed, all in. They increased from 18.1% of the market to 19.7%, so 1.6% increase. And overall, the market increased, as far as what's listed, by 3,478. Now, the colubrid market by itself, breaking that down, you've got hognose coming in at 37%. You've got corn snakes at 28%. King snakes at 13%. Bulls, pines, and gophers at 7%. Rat snakes at 6%. Milk snakes at 5%. All of the colubrids that fall into the other colubrids make it up 3%. That I love that category. That's where so much of the good stuff is, They're making up 3%. Garters are at 1%, and house snakes do not even make up 1% at this point. I'm telling you that those two right there, garters and house snakes, are such a strong market to be had. As far as actual numbers, 721 pits are listed. 2,925 corn snakes are listed. 84 garter snakes. 3,800 hognose. 36 house snakes. 1,373 kings. 464 milks. 671 rats. And 325 other. That's where your falsies are, Zach. And your falsies actually make up, I should probably map that out once, but falsies seem to be the most common other in that particular arena.
I don't know who did that.
Some guy breeding them by the thousands.
Yeah, that might be me.
So some current trends and patterns and just things to point out for everybody. Right now, the largest shows of the year have kind of passed. There's still like a NARBC St. Louis, and there's some other decent, but the biggest shows of the year have kind of come and gone. And so we'll begin to head into the fall lull, but there will be some highs within the fall lull. And we'll talk about that. There's very little new that will hit. And what I mean is the things that are posted, you may see more of those, but there's not a whole lot of new species. Like you may see some more black milks because they tend to be late. Subox, those will be late. You see those posted in late fall. But other than that, what's posted is typically what you're going to see for the rest of the year, maybe a little more of the same thing for the most part. The BP market, the share continues to decline, which is a positive thing. That's not saying a negative thing about ball pythons or those keepers, but what it is showing us is we're starting to see more and more of a balance. We're seeing a balance online. We're seeing a balance starting to shift in the shows. Show promoters are encouraging more multi-species vendors and limiting the number of BP vendors. Quick story. There's a newer show, but it's a bigger show and is gaining a lot of popularity. And I talked to the promoter while I was at Tinley because I wanted to know the laws for this particular state. And, I said, I didn't know if you were, full. And he says, well, we are full, for this particular show that was coming in a few months. And he says, what do you work with? And he looks at the table and he says, we'll make room. We'll make room for you to come. Because again, it's, what we were working with. Hog nose and corns are heavy. You heard me say that earlier. So, be cognizant of that. Show attendance is lessening a little. It's show attendance seems to be softening, but in-person buying is still strong. So the people that are coming to the shows, unless it's a monthly show, I'm not a fan of monthly shows. I don't really like those because it saturates that market and the people start losing a sense of urgency. Sometimes it's let's just take the kids to the petting zoo. I like the kids, don't get me wrong, but it's less buying and more let's go kill some time when it's a monthly. But anyways, show attendance, even with it being fewer people, the people that are coming in are still looking to purchase. So don't let it cause dismay whenever you see, and don't beat up your show promoters. They're still promoting. There's the reason that show attendance seems to be lessening a little bit is not because they're not out there doing what they need to be doing. It's, let's face it, there's a lot of what if and angst across the country right now when it comes to economy, when it comes to goods, when it comes to the price of everything we're paying. So it's happening. It's not just the reptile market. It's everything. We see these kinds of things taking place. Some 30 and 60 day advice for you. Black Friday is only 6 weeks away. That's literally the topic that we had on our manager's call here at Metazotics this morning. While we feel like, okay, Tinley's over. We have 6 weeks and bam, we've got Black Friday. So we have to start preparing for that now. And I'm going to recommend that if you are someone who sells, you need to start thinking about that. You may not have, a shop that you have to go get everything ready for, but what are you going to do to capitalize on the buying frenzy that takes place during that weekend? And how are you going to do it? Where are you going to do it? Start thinking that now. You've got about 6 to 8 weeks left on shipping weather, so be cognizant of that with your payment plans. How far, if you push a 90-day payment plan right now, you're going to be sitting with that animal longer than that because you're not going to have a window to ship it for a month or two afterwards. So just keep that in mind as you do those. If you have late season starts like Subox, like I mentioned those, you'll be one of the few with a new that you get to post. So that's a good thing. If you work with any of those species, that's going to be a highlight. You're going to get attention because people are going to be seeing the same things pretty routinely right now. So make sure that you make it a big deal whenever you do post that new thing, for sale. Plan your spring breeding now. And I say that because even if you change a little bit on what's going to happen, and if you have a big enough collection, inevitably, okay, that one animal perished during cool down. But if you plan your spring breeding now, it's going to tell you what animals you may want to move to new homes. And now I'm going to say this is more talking to those who have limited space and are doing a lot of breeding, because I'm not saying animals should just be passed along, anytime that you're no longer going to breed them. Hopefully a lot of you are keeping these animals for their life. They become your pets. That is great. That is fine. If you are individuals who, as time goes on, you move snakes to their new homes, this is the time to plan on that. Because if you plan on it now, then you would have an easier time selling them, because these other individuals are going to want to capitalize on being able to brewmate them and breed them themselves next spring. So this is the best time to make those decisions. Finally, this is something I've been working on pretty diligently. 2026 show schedules are out in most cases. So most of the promoters, Show Me's got most of their 2026 shows, already out. What I do is I go through, and if there is any show in any state that is a maybe for me, I list the date, the city, the promotion, and if it's a 1 day, 2 day, whatever, I do a big Excel spreadsheet with that. And then I auto sort them to put them in order by date. Once I have all that, I can start picking, okay, I can see where shows overlap, I can see where they would be, and then we start highlighting what shows we're actually going to attend. So I would just say that sooner that you can do that, the better prepared you can be for your 2026 season, and making sure it's going to be a good one for you. And that, my friend, is the marketing update.
All right. So I am going to blitz through. Yeah, there you go. Says Dan Clint, I'm always listening in the car. This is so much more interesting with the charts. Visual aids, my friend. Yep. Anywho, so I am going to do the science update brought to us by our friends at Rare Genetics Inc. As always, get those sheds to Rare Genetics Inc. If you give them the code CCR15, you will get a discount. So please do that. I saw that they are interested in Pichaophis. I have literally been keeping every single shed from the small pit army that is accruing at school and here at the house to send to Kayla, Ben, and company. So please help them out and do that. I am going to do this kind of quickly, but this is going to be a theme in the science update. So we're now getting the data back from Iowa. Alyssa, for those of you who were at Colubrid Fest, my graduate student, she is doing the snake community research where we're looking at all the animals. And so one of the things I asked her to do is just kind of go over the data and try to find and see if there's like any nuggets that stand out. And we have a big juicy nugget that is very interesting to me. And that is, and has a direct tie to herpetoculture, 100%. And that tie is feeding frequency and growth. So I have heard lots of people kind of poo-poo feeding the snakes more than once a week. I've heard lots of people say, baby colubrids don't get fat. Feed them, get them, past that baby snake point. Mm-hmm. And so with that being said, I thought it would be really cool to look at our data, because when we catch the snakes, we take a picture of them, we do a pit tag, and so we're able to track their size over time. And two of the snakes are just blowing my brain, and I might have talked about this a little bit, but one of those are the blue racers that are on the site, because we've caught blue racers, and they had the pattern that anybody that's a herper knows. A baby racer has this nice pattern to it. And that was in April. And then in August, we caught the same snakes. And if you would have handed me that snake in August and told me it was the same animal in May, I would have looked at you like you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Because these animals are growing in the matter of a year 20 to 30 inches. It's insane how much they're growing. And so Alyssa did a little bit of digging to see, did other people, find this? And sure enough, she found this paper called Comparative Ecology and Life History of the Racer in Michigan. Single author paper, Philip Rosen. It comes out of the journal Copia, which is a biggie, but it was published in 1991. And so this is kind of proof that those older papers, that we shouldn't throw them into the heap because they didn't have R and fancy statistics and all that kind of stuff. This is just your classic, I'm studying a population of a snake. I'm trying to figure out how that snake snakes. And that's the best way to explain it. And so one of the things that's great in this paper is that they also had mark recapture of racers. And what Alyssa found, and this is just kind of food for thought for discussion at a later point in time. So I'm going to do what I tell everybody not to do in my classes, which is feverishly scroll through this thing. And so if you're looking at this on YouTube, I highlighted the parts that are important. And that's basically that they calculated out, and I'll read this to you. So they caught the snakes, they had the recapture data, and they were able to basically figure out that there's these two modes in the population, and they state the size frequency histogram has modes that are consistent with sizes expected from growth rate data. Snakes that are 42 to 75 millimeters long, which translates to, I gave myself a cheat sheet here. There we go. 18 to 29 inches long were classified as 1-year-old snakes. So these things are getting to 2 feet in their first year, which I want you to think about a little bit. Wow. And then, whereas snakes that are 751 millimeters to 800 millimeters snout vent length were divided between age classes 1 and 2, which basically means they're older than 1, but they're not older than 2. And that translates to, this is so hard to do. You all can't see this in the car. It's not letting me do it. Basically pushing, over 30 inches. So this has made me think a lot about this idea of power feeding, because if you give something like a racer 1 prey item a week, that is actually probably not equivalent to what they're getting in the wild, and we use the wild as our gold standard. So I feel like that's something we need to think a little bit more about. And this whole grow them slow thing, I totally understand why you do that with a python and a boa. That makes complete sense. But for these active pursuit predaceous colubrids that are out doing things all the time, especially little, if you think about this from an evolutionary perspective, it makes so much sense to get to 30 inches in your first year or over 18 inches in your first year, because think about all the potential predators you're ticking off the list because you're now getting big enough to defend yourself. So that's that. The other thing from this paper, which was kind of like a whoa for me, is if we go up here to the abstract and you look at this, the minimum age at maturity was 11 months in males and 2 years in females. And so these are wild snakes. So that means that these snakes are reaching sexual maturity in under a year. So I'm not saying we should do this, but I am saying that, we preach in here, go to nature. And this is a pretty cool study. So we're going to be mimicking, we're going to be doing a more updated version of what they did in 1991. But Alyssa, she's fallen hard for the racers. So we are definitely going to be looking at their age. We also have this beautiful situation where last year a clutch of bull snakes hatched, and I'm pretty sure the nest was just conveniently like 2 meters away from the drift fence, and they caught a bunch of age 0 bull snakes, which basically means babies. And they were able to put pit tags in those babies and let them go. And what's really, really cool to me is a lot of them survived. So we always hear baby snakes die. And they had a bunch of recaptures. And those bulls, they're like a year old. And some of them are pushing, they're over 2 feet, not quite 3. And so the other thing that this makes me think is like, are they just out there eating all the damn time? Like I have kankakis in my office right now that were newborns that I am basically doing the equivalent of power feeding, and they're not at 3 feet. And I'm not power feeding them to hurt them. I'm just literally doing an experiment, scientists remember, to just see like if I feed 2 small prey items, one on Monday, one on Thursday, what's my growth? And I can tell, oh my God, they're like growing like weeds. I feel like if I look at them, I can see them grow. That's how much they're freaking growing. So anyway, so this is definitely going to be a great example of where we take what we find in the field and start thinking about how we can apply it to herpetoculture. I'm going to be showing more papers like this. I already have a bunch. And then I have a paper right now that's really cool. It looks at inbreeding in Massasauga rattlesnakes. And they were actually able to do this crazy paternity study in the wild because they've been studying this population for 15 years. and they had the foresight to take tissue for the entire duration of the study. But we're going to have a paper coming up on inbreeding in the wild and how that impacts herpetoculture. But we need to move on because we have our guest waiting. So I'm going to take this nerdy paper away and bring to the stage our good pal from Colubrid Fest 2025, Jerry Hartley.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Jerry.
All right. So we brought Jerry on because Jerry has history doing in two buckets of herpetoculture that Clint and I both love.
Mm-hmm.
Locality keeping and kind of classic American colubrids with gopher snakes, Cali Kings, Desert Kings, all that jazz. And we got to meet Jerry at Colubrid Fest. I've conversed with Jerry quite a bit, a couple years ago when it came to I think it was Yuma Kings or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we're happy to have you here. You've been in the locality keeping game for quite some time. So welcome to Colubrid and Colubrid Radio, Jerry.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you guys having me. I feel honored to be able to be on part of the show, and wanted to take just a quick second to thank you guys for all that you do, not only for just me, but for the community itself. Like, it's amazing. Every time that I tune in and listen to a podcast, it just gets better and better and better. I mean, it's such a cool thing, and there's so much more involvement, but truly it's been a game changer with you guys doing what you're doing and the passion that you have out there, to include the Colubrid Fest, where we met physically, not just electronically, but the community there and the folks that were involved and the passion behind it. It was such a cool experience in terms of not just the show. And I had no idea what to expect, right? The show is the show, and shows are always a show. However, the show was cool in the respect that it was a bunch of like-minded people. But prior to that, all the educational stuff and all of the involvement with, in particular, I really enjoyed the whole presentation that the kids that did the Iowa project, was such a cool thing. And I was like, man, I would love to go there just to be a part of it, just to watch those kids do what they're doing, because they were so exuberant about the whole thing. But anyway, amazing job that you guys are doing with everything that's part of it. And as you always say, you always kind of a CYA thing, not to put down ball python people or anything like that. You're very diplomatic about it for the right reasons, because it's not about one or the other. That's for sure. It's just about what we prefer, right? And so you're getting it out there for all of us. And anyway, thank you so much for doing all the work that you guys do. It's super cool.
Well, we certainly appreciate that, Jerry. And I can tell you that we loved meeting you out at Colubrid Fest. I mean, it was, Zac and I are talking afterwards about, hey, did you talk to so-and-so? And both of us were like, Jerry was awesome, because we loved your energy, your enthusiasm, and, how excited you were to be there. And I mean, that's what it was all about. So we were thrilled to meet with you. And we both were like, we need to get him on the show. He needs to come on, because we want to talk Callies. We want to talk, Gophers. So it's, definitely, Jerry. It was our pleasure. Trust me.
Awesome.
Our pleasure. Well, if we want to get into it, I mean, we always like to start with the backstory. Jerry, how did you get into this? Where did it come about? I mean, what was that first reptile? Just tell us the story of Jerry.
The famous question. I'll never forget as a young adult, my mom asking me, because my mom was my biggest supporter in all of this, rewarded me for always good grades and everything. We lived close to the East Bay Vivarium in the Bay Area of California. And that was when Ron Cobble, he was the guy that created it. And it was always the cool thing with good grades and good behavior and all that. Mom would take me to that place, and I would get whatever cool stuff I wanted. But to answer your question, my very first snake was a Pacific gopher snake, and I'm sure there's the smile I expected to see on Zac's face. I actually still have a picture of that animal, and so in 1967, and I was 5 years old, I got my first gopher snake and never looked back. Interestingly enough, I remember very vividly as not being able to read well. Let's say that. About the information that was published at the time for how do you feed this, what's the husbandry, all that kind of thing, right? And my mom did a little bit of the husbandry thing on that. And at the time, the book that she read, I don't know if it was a good old fashioned TFH book or what it was, but to feed it chicken eggs. So for the first 2 years of me having that animal, that's all it ever ate was chicken eggs. Put a chicken egg in there, and that's all it ever ate, right? And it survived perfectly fine. It would get that egg once a week, but and then it obviously is being able to read progressively through the years and learn more and more, and because everything was reading back then in the 60s and 70s, so not like the cool tools that we have nowadays, which I still get to learn from because of that. But anyway, that was my very first snake, and it just blossomed into there. Again, going to the East Bay Vivarium to include, I'm not saying to do this for parents that are listening out there, but at 11 years old, my mother rewarded me with having good grades with my first rattlesnake that I purchased. And I'm not saying parents don't do this. Obviously, my mom loved me very much, but yeah.
Or did she, Jerry?
No. So yeah, 1973, I had my first rattlesnake, and it was a Northern Pacific, because that's what was common to the Bay Area, and Ron Cobble had those. You could buy all the different venomous snakes, whatever there was available in that store at the time, right? So it was one of the cool old Metaframe sliding tops where you put the padlock on it, right? And and he showed me at age 11, okay, when you take the snake out, I bought a snake hook, pick it up with a snake hook, put it in a garbage can, and put the lid on it. Do your cleaning, pick that animal up, put it back in there, and slide. And my mom was standing right there, and of course she's like, "Okay, if you can do all this, you can have this animal." And of course I did, but from there I just got, I had my first ball python at 11, boa constrictors, like all of it. But I did the lizards, I did all the arachnids, like everything, just much like you guys. I'm sure you guys had everything that was out there. So that question that you ask, how do you get into this? And we all answer, I don't really know. It's just one of those things that we organically have, and the passion behind it. But that was kind of my early life story. As it progressed, we lived in Northern California, where you could find mountain king snakes as well. And so again, back to my mom, she brought me my very first Zonata. Her and my father were out cutting wood. We heated by wood in the home that we lived in, and brought home in a coffee can my very first mountain king snake, because she saw it crossing the road and knew that I would want it. So great stuff like that. Again, my mom was very supportive. My old man, he wasn't. He was supportive because my mom wanted him to be, but he was never a real snake guy. But as a young adult, I finally got him to not kill venomous snakes. He was an avid fisherman and hunter, and he would run into rattlesnakes all the time, and got to where he would just give them a wide berth and let them be on their way. So
sometimes that's, all you can ask for. Exactly. I'm not going to ask you to love them. I'm just going to ask you to respect them.
Right. And that was it too. And he did. And then he was a little more supportive later in life. But from there, it just went into, I got real into rosy boas, and was had a huge, very eclectic rosy boa collection. Again, all locality stuff. Did a lot of, I don't know if pioneering is the right word. I don't want to sound like I'm patting myself on the back, but
you can go do that, dude.
Yeah.
Well, pioneering, if you will, like, hey, there's a dirt road that goes into a mountain range that I don't think anybody's ever found a rosy boa in. Let's go check that out, kind of mentality. Part of that was my mentor in life is Gary Kiesler, probably one of the most amazing herp folks that there is on the planet, and he's the one that taught me so much about locality specific of everything, not just rosy boas, but of everything. And he's the one that also taught me so much about colubrids. So went through the whole rosy boa thing. Again, had a huge collection with that, and then kind of branched into some of the different colubrids. Always had gopher snakes in my life because that was my first snake. And to this day, if somebody asked me if you could only have one snake, what would it be? And they're blown away when I said a Pacific gopher snake, because that was the first snake for me, and it's always been the love of my life. The rosy boas were cool because they led me to fall in love with my wife, who I've built an amazing life with. So I owe so much to them. However, they became a protected species in the state of Nevada, where I was from, and so I had to get rid of them all, and that gave me my further love for colubrids and or the king snakes. Again, I've always had the gopher snakes, but got into the king snakes that way. So from there on out, it's just been the colubrids to include the bull snakes, as Zac mentioned before. And I love all Pituophis, but I limited myself to just locality California king snakes and some of the Splendida, some of the desert kings, and just a few of the locality of the bull snakes and some of the gopher snakes. And that's what I have in my collection now. And you guys saw on the table colubrid fest. So I know that Zac even was gracious enough to even purchase one of those striped gopher snakes. And if you
ever, one of my favorite snakes that I got.
Well, if you ever want it paired up, I'm going to bring you a female, and it's going to be on the house because I know how passionate you are on that. So
awesome.
Very cool. Thanks, man.
Anyway, I have to say, as a father of two twin 10-year-old boys who will be turning 11 in November, in just 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, could they handle a rattlesnake? And I've got one boy that I think, I bet he could do it. And it's because he's extremely meticulous.
Okay.
I'm like, what? I bet he could do it. But then I got another boy that I think he's the one who loves the snakes. But I've also seen him walking around with one sock on. And I know at one point he had two socks on. And when I ask, hey, where'd your sock go? And he looks around and goes, I don't know. I'm like, I don't think he's ready. I don't think it's not going to get a rattle. We're going to stick to garters, buddy.
Maybe he took it off to use it as a snake bag. We've all used socks as snake bags, you never know.
We've all lost socks, but I've not lost it off my foot and not realized that I lost it off my foot. So okay.
The joy of being 10.
That's right.
So I have a question in regards to this. You can keep like king snakes, right? But you kept snakes and kept records of the locality, and you've been doing that a while, So what about the locality was important to you? To keep, like, I remember when I was like, I think about this locality thing all the time, being the nerd that I am, and my interest in natural history, and I can't figure out why the hell I didn't do this sooner.
Right.
Like, to me, it just like, why are you only doing this now when you're in your 40s? Like, this should have been what you were. So I'm really, really curious. Did the locality notes come first, or was it more, I saw a picture of these things live in this valley, I want one like that, I should write the locality down? You understand what I'm getting at? Like,
absolutely.
That's part of this I really like to dig in with the locality people.
Absolutely. And what inspired that, the integrity of keeping it that way was, in fact, rosy boas, because while there's, the different subspecies, there's such a vast presentation of color and pattern out there amongst them that it was about seeing folks that were catching different ones and breeding, ones from this locality to another and making animals that would have never been found in the wild. So for me, a lot of it was the conservation part of it, but keeping the integrity of that animal as it would occur in the wild, because you guys being herpers yourself, we love to spend time in the field. I mean, more so than anything else, right? If we could do that for a living, that's what we would all be doing. But anyway, so it was about keeping the integrity of those animals because of the uniqueness based on not only the geographics, but their prey items. And that just kind of moved over into the king snake thing, because learning more about king snakes and then doing the little bit of research and seeing different animals from different localities. I mean, you saw on the table that I had, there's this huge array of naturally occurring patterns and colors just in California king snakes, and within specific geographics, like the Central Valley of California, there's so many different variations of those animals just within that area. It's amazing. And then there's isolated populations that do the same thing into Southern California and even down into Baja. you know, without having the representation of all the different pictures, which I used to have this really cool website that had all that stuff on it, and I need to fire it back up again. Anyway, that presentation to be able to show people, it gets more people into, as you just said yourself, Zach, that why didn't I do this long ago? Other people have that same epiphany, like, man, this is within itself is just an amazing thing, and they're naturally occurring. Now, what I see, and I'm going to use your word that you used before. I don't want to sound like I'm poo-pooing this whole thing, but there are animals that we breed. I'll use scissors crossing the striped desert kings. Like there's the wide stripe ones, and those animals are amazing as they are, but they don't. Very, very rarely do they occur and look like that in the wild, right? We all do selective breedings. If you have a conversation with good old Craig Trumbauer, he'll tell you none of us keep the 5s. We all keep the 10s, right? We all the holdbacks. So
I think he said that on the show.
Yes. He preaches that, and that's true. That's what we all do, right? As keepers, we want the best of the best, and we have, as you know, if you can do the old quotation things, the holdbacks that we all keep. And each year we keep doing that more and more. So to further answer your question, it's about, for me, keeping that naturally occurring look that you would only find in the wild. Again, nothing against the selective breeding. I think it's awesome. I do it myself. However, I'm more interested in that naturally occurring animal that you would see in the wild. And by doing that, I've set up tons of board lines in different places to be able to see those same animals in the wild year after year. And I still see some of those same animals year after year under the same board, observing the same hole, even having to replace the board because the board has gone back to good old Mother Earth, right? And so I need to give that animal something else. And then I've seen the babies that they've produced that, and just to be able to see that over and over, and that naturally occurring pattern morph and color morph is what does it for me. And not just in king snakes, but in the gopher snakes, as I've already seen with what I've had at the show, and the bull snakes as well. You just mentioned earlier that you had kankakees. One of my all-time favorite of all the naturally occurring bull snakes that there are out there are those animals. And I had the pleasure, goodness, it was 2016, of going to Illinois and had no idea what I was doing. I was there for work and thought, I'm in the sand. I'm in this. I was probably an hour and a half just outside of Kankakee. I'm like, I'm going to rent a car. I'm going to stay a couple extra days. I went and rented the car, went and drove out there and drove the funny little dirt roads just right out of the town of Kankakee, and found some old dilapidated barns and stuff, and found myself in the wild to be able to do that. And it was a bucket list thing for me, but it came true. And so those have a soft place in my heart too. But any of the locality stuff, the gray band folks, they're about as anal as it gets when it comes to that. And God bless them for it. I think it's amazing that they do that, right? Part of it is because it's limited as to where you can really find them. Yes, that's all over West Texas, but it's still limited habitat where you can actually access them. So it's very important that they do that. So again, the whole just keeping the integrity of the animals, how they occur in the wild, is what it's all about for me.
That's very cool.
I've always joked, it's like when it comes to locality keepers, it's generally it's county. It's usually what people are saying. It's the county. Gray band guys, they want to know the freaking rock that you found this thing on. I mean, it's like there's locality as it gets. You can say the road, but is it this mile or this mile marker that's from? Right. They're hardcore on it. There's
and I try to practice that with all the stuff. Even back in the Rosie Boa days, I would tell people, I found this snake in this mountain range on this dirt road at this elevation, and people would be so mad at me for telling other folks that. I'm like, look, I could spend the rest of my days trying to pair this one animal up. Why wouldn't I increase my odds of having other folks maybe go find one and then be able to breed those animals in captivity? It was just part of it. But I can't say enough about the diversity that there is, even within just the California king snakes themselves, is amazing to me. Even in just a 10-mile radius, And that's why I try to be as granular as possible with the locality data.
Well, and I tell you, I'm sorry, go ahead, Zach.
No, well, okay. So what's really interesting is here in the East, I got into locality Florida Kingsnakes.
Okay.
And I can tell a difference. I wouldn't be surprised unless you're like really into it. If I like what are called the intergrade.
Yeah.
Where basically you get the Floridana and the Getula come together.
Yeah.
Like Hernando County, Pasco County.
Yeah.
That whole area on the Gulf Coast, and you get weird purples and browns and caramel colors and deep yellows and oranges and like all these cool things. But realistically speaking, there's probably like 10. But when I kind of started to dive into the California King localities, I got Hubbs's book, and
amazing.
It overwhelmed me so quickly. I was just like, whoa, what the hell? And then, like I got into the Mud Kings, and I'm going to botch this epically right now. But I was like, okay, these are the Newport Mud King, blah, 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 blah. Then there was like another hypermelanistic color phase that was like up in the Central Valley or something like that. I don't know.
Right.
And I was like, but how are they different? Like what? And so I got mad respect for the Cali King people.
Yeah, and just what you just touched on right there. So I found some of those hypermelanistic animals all the way up into Butte County, which is true Northern California, right?
Yeah.
Right alongside just a normal banded animal, right? And so the question has always been, Chris Sharp and I are very close, and I think Chris has done a talk with you guys as well.
Yep.
And I've learned a lot from that young man in terms of the Central Valley stuff because he lives there and has spent a lot of time there. But like the question has always been, why? What is the gain in that? And there's so many different theories around the ancient lake that was there throughout the whole valley, and that they needed it to be able to, that darkness to be able to warm up. And like, there's so many different theories as to that. But then you go all the way down 1,500 miles south and you find those same type of animals in Baja, California. What's the gain there?
Yep.
You're like, what?
Mm-hmm.
So it's
totally
questions. And then there's big gaps of just normal animals in between those. So like that's one of those things that intrigues me so much about the locality Cal Kings because of that. And I have found, three different, if you would, for lack of a better term, morphs, if you will, pattern morphs underneath the same board that don't look anything like each other. And they're all coexisting right there. Like I even have video on it. I took a friend that was from Idaho, and I went with Chris and we took him to this very first board spot he'd ever been. He always wanted to flip a Cal King. And I go, so underneath this board up here, there's going to be a hypomelanistic, not hyper, but hypomelanistic animal. Mm-hmm. She's always there. I've seen her for years. And sure enough, he flips it over. And not only is she under there, but there's two hypermelanistic animals right next to her. Right?
Wow.
And he was like, you guys put these here, right? Like, yeah, that's just what we did. We staged them there and put them there just for you, and drove and went and picked you up from the airport, and then drove all the way back. And but it was one of those amazing field observations. But again, and I've had so many of those in so many different places. Same with the striped gopher snakes. That's a recessive gene, so you don't find as many, but flip a board and you see that striped gopher snake right next to a normal pattern animal. And they're like, why? What is the gain? Because there has to be, well, I guess there doesn't have to be, but in my way of thinking, there has to be some gain as to why those animals look the way they look. I don't know. You being the scientist, Zach, I'm going to leave that one up to you to figure out.
So here's what's really fun about color patterns and everything. I'm going to bring it to crayfish again. Here in West Virginia, like literally probably within 200 meters of where I'm sitting, there's probably a colony of them. We have this blue crayfish. It's bright blue. It's got red tips. And one of the guys at school, I brought him on as a postdoc. He just got his doctorate, and I brought him up to West Liberty and hosted him. And he just the way we are with the Mud Kings and the Grease Kings, that is exactly the way that Zach Graham is with these blue crayfish. Awesome. And he wanted to know, why are they blue from an evolutionary perspective? And I was like, cool, you can answer that question and learn how to do it, and then we'll study snakes. So, you know what I mean? And he's there for crawdads. But anyway, so he did all this insane science. He literally reminds me of that meme of Charlie from Always Sunny at Philadelphia with the red, ropes. And he's like, I think I understand what's going on. Like, just absolute insanity. And after studying this now, I think 8 years, he published his paper, and his final findings were basically were it doesn't matter at all. It's an accident. Like, that's what he did,
Wow.
And it was just literally like there was no evolutionary advantage. He did the genome stuff. There was nothing really going on with the genes. It was just basically these things, when they evolved, were blue. And it's what we call evolution. It's evolutionally neutral, which means it's not advantage. It's not negative. It just kind of exists. Yes. And that's why they're blue. And that's basically what he's come to a conclusion with. And I asked him, like, so how do you feel about that being the end game of all this time? And he was like, it sucks. I was like, I thought about this for years and years and years, and just to find out it's just an evolutionary neutral trait. That's basically what all the data is saying. So I do often wonder, like, we want there to be reason for some of this stuff. And I think that I don't know how much of it, but maybe a fair amount of it is that it's just it's neutral. Like a striped gopher snake isn't really that different from a patterned gopher snake. To us, it is. But if you think about that snake moving around out in nature, it might not be that big. It could just be neutral, and you get a small population, the gene pops up, and that's why you get striped ones there. Or there could be some evolutionary advantage we don't know about. But that's the stuff, to me, when you got these regional colors or phenotypes or whatever you want to call it, that, like, my nerd brain goes absolutely insane.
Right.
Just
agreed.
Thinking about it. And that's the fun part. Like, it's a good way to, I could scroll on my phone and watch a bunch of worthless crap on Instagram, or I could scroll Google Earth and try to figure out what the hell geologic frameworks isolating these guys that make it. And so, I've done that with with my kings, and I think that's what I really like about the locality stuff is that layer.
Seems like, I mean, it would make complete sense, and the gopher snakes is exactly the example I was going to give. Is whenever you said that, like, if we just think about mutations now, when it comes to actual full on, different localities looking different, it's hard for me to not think there's something that, is making it go that way. There's got to be some advantage that they've shifted with. But when you have literally striped gophers, and these normal gophers, and you have populations, happening together at the same time, I almost think that with mutations, there's not like someone pulling the lever that says, let's try this.
Right.
Let's try it. They're random and it pops out. And there has to be a certain amount of mutations that, while it doesn't necessarily give an advantage, it's not a disadvantage.
Yep.
And so with it being neutral, I can see completely why some of those would just start to exist. I mean, even like where you have several populations of anery corns, right? Where, it's, and normals, and it's because while, maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. It's so that makes complete sense. And I bet there's probably more of that than what we really even realize, out there, where it's just a mutation that just, it's just as good as the normal, and so it ends up being bred into the population more. So I like that. That was a good little side tangent, you two. That was a good piece. So
yeah, what's interesting too is and when you get further north, there isn't really any diversity in terms of, like, where I grew up in Shasta County, all the animals are just black and white, maybe a little bit chocolatey, but black and white banded animals with thin bands. There's been no aberrant animals that I've ever found, or friends that have ever found. I've never seen any examples of it or anything like that. So again, why did it occur in those places is that question. And then the oldest question is, okay, what came first, the striped king snake or the banded king snake, right? Like, that's always, so who knows? And I know that you referenced Hub's book on common king snakes, which has a big section on the cow kings. And there's a lot of different thought processes in those animals that we talked about in Central California. While I'm not a big subscriber of the different names given almost to like a subspecies type classification because of the pattern stuff, because again, we just asked that question, why? Like, why wouldn't we call the other ones those different names as well? So again, not putting down Hub's book in any way, shape, or form, because it's amazing. It was, for lack of a better term, a Bible for me for a while as well, because there's so much knowledge to be gained from that book, much like a lot of his other books. But my biggest go-to guy was Chris Sharp in the Central Valley, because he had spent a lot of time in the different localities throughout that whole region, and some of the stuff that he's found over time is just amazing in terms of pattern. I mean, I found a few because I have spent some time there, but nothing like what he has found. And to include the hypomelanism stuff too. I actually have animals from Davis, California, not only the hypermelanistic animals that are aberrant with the dark bellies, but I have banded animals that are just hypo. And there's been upon kind of posting that out there, I've received feedback that there's actually been quite a few of the hypo animals. Interestingly enough, they're always banded also, not the aberrant animals. So anyway, too much stuff to geek out on. Sorry, I get a little long-winded. And
it's why we're here, buddy.
Yeah,
we're here. So quick question then that I have is, for you, since you were actually collecting the stock, was the herping more fun than the keeping, or was the keeping more fun than the herping, or were they equal to each? Like what drove the herpetological obsession more, the herping or?
Well, so that's a fantastic question. Both are therapy for me, as I know they probably are for you guys, but in different respects, right? So I've spent a lot of time with my family, obviously a lot of times with some of the most amazing people I have the pleasure of knowing in my life, to include my best friends, but with family and those moments of taking my son and my daughter out. And, I have so many old pictures still of my son Jake flipping over one of the boards, and there's a king snake that we saw last year, and I remember that snake, those kinds of stuff. That's that therapy of that whole thing. But the keeping part of it is definitely therapeutic, because I'll put on one of your guys' podcasts and go out there and do cleaning and feeding and just have my me time. You know what I mean? Like that's it's our excuse to have a man cave. While it's not like any other man caves except for other herpers, that's our escape, right? We get that therapy, and I think that it helps us as people in general so much to be able to do that. And then to be able to do the breeding part and not know what's going to potentially pop out. There's no cooler high than when you see things starting to poke out of an egg and like, okay, here we go, and come back a couple days later and go, whoa, I didn't see that coming at all. There's no greater high than that. So to answer your question, I would say it's of equal, but for different reasons.
So what locality Cal Kings are you working with now?
So I've cut back on stuff because I had upwards of 60 different localities. But what I started doing, and Zac mentioned this earlier, kind of got a little more regional in terms of the geographics, because there's a lot of animals that look, I was again referring back to the Rosie days. Animals that were just 10 miles apart were important to me because they did look different, right? And the Cal King things, I was doing the same thing, but I had to cut back because there's like, all right, there isn't enough big differences with some of these localities as there are as if you just did good representations of the geographics. So, I have a couple localities of the Central California animals, and then Northern California, and then some of the Southern California animals, and to include Arizona and stuff. You were talking about intergrades earlier, Zac, and one of the coolest intergrades for king snakes is out there in Green Valley, out in Arizona, where 3 different subspecies come together, and you can go down the road down there and see a perfectly good Cal King, then see a perfectly good Splendida, and then you could potentially even find a black king, you know what I mean? Or these crazy combinations of like no two snakes look alike down in those areas. And you talked about that. And that's another one of those things that triggered me to do more of the locality stuff and to know where maybe some of those lines are drawn. It's too big the geographics are too big to narrow it down to that, but it was fun trying. So, so to answer your question, I have good representation from different areas to include some of the desert animals, but I love the coastal stuff. You had mentioned the muds. And that's referred to as Southern California hypermelanistic animals specifically. Yep. I think of all of them, I just call them all hypermelanistic. I know there's patterns that have been assigned to them and all that, and I just say aberrant hypermelanistic. I know there's a lot of ambiguity with that, but there's a lot of ambiguity with when you're breeding those animals. I bred some Marina Del Rey animals this year that are, like you said, the Mud Kings, and the pattern on them is they're hypermelanistic, but the pattern on them is what they call the Newporter pattern. And these two animals didn't produce anything that looked like them at all. I got normal banded animals, I got hypermelanistic banded animals, and I even got just a weird aberrant animal. None of them look like the parents at all. And I try to have the good representation of just some of those areas to answer your question, because there's too much. Like you can't, because I do the same thing with gopher snakes, and I do the same thing with bull snakes. I don't need 1,000 snakes. 150 snakes that's plenty for me. So, but you could do 1,000 snakes easily, and just king snakes. You guys know that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Zac does.
Yeah.
So here's a question on some of the localities, because one of the things that we tend to talk about the most when we talk about locality animals is the variance in appearance. Can you speak on any variance in anything else with some of these localities? Like, for example, size differences, clutch size difference, just behavioral differences, just anything that you've noticed in the various localities other than just appearance that would segment them out?
Sure. Great question, by the way. One of the first one that came to mind was an insular animal, the Cal Kings that come off of Catalina Island, right? So they're thought to be a lesser form, and in my experience, in some of the animals that I have seen in other collections that are wild animals, some of the founding stock, you'd be hard pressed to get a real big one over 3 foot, and that's and again, that's another place that they've been isolated long enough that they all look the same. That it's a high band count, very narrow band on the animals. They all have pretty much the same coloring, but they're definitely a lesser animal. And then I've seen animals in the Arizona mountain ranges, like the Hualapai Mountains, and I've seen, or even, I guess would be more familiar for some people, Baghdad, Arizona. It's one of those names people usually recognize. I've seen on 2 separate occasions legitimate 5-foot black and white desert phase California kingsnakes.
Damn.
Yeah. So,
Awesome.
they were monsters. It blew my mind. They look like a neon sign. You would never see them there now. Unfortunately, that road, there's the copper mine that's up at the top of that road it's littered with the big trucks that haul the ore in and out. So the only snakes you find there now are flat ones. And then some of the coastal animals also get very, very big. And is it related to, you were talking about the study that was done earlier about the animals growing on the racers, and that blew my mind. I mean, that's exponential growth in a year's period. So is it related to prey items, and what's available and all that? I would like to think so, but I've seen some of the coastal animals very, very big. Now, what I will give you an example of those Davis animals, and in that area, Solano County and Yolo County, where I have some of the board spots set up, I've seen year over year neonates from that hypomelanistic gal that I was referring to earlier, seeing her babies, and the next year see exponential growth, because again, I'm getting to see those same animals under the same boards. Now, was it to that extent? It was nothing near that, but again, those animals get big too. So it definitely makes a difference geographically where they're at. And my thought process is that you would think that it would be prey items, but I don't know. Seeing those 5-foot animals that are up there in Baghdad, there's not a lot of food items up there. I mean, they're probably eating chuckwallas and obviously kangaroo rats and whatever other rodents they can get a hold of, but not like it would be for coastal animals that have all the other reptiles to eat and all the other prey items. So that's a great question, and I'm sure there's probably somebody else that's maybe done a little more study on those particular things, but for me, it's just been field observations, and that's just what I've seen.
So there's been a few, and I can't remember the exact localities, just over the years, hearing different things on, well, with these, do this, right? I think, and if you know, or you correct me, if I'm wrong here, but like scissor crossings, I think that do they tend to have smaller clutch sizes than some of the others?
To answer your question, in my experience, they're not any smaller than any of the others. Again, it's solely dependent upon the size of the adult animals too. I mean, you're going to get
fair, yeah.
Just like anything else, you're going to get larger clutch sizes. But in most of the average that I've had with those guys is probably 6 to 8, and you get other animals that are coastal animals or even the Central Valley animals that are the same way. The coastal animals definitely will lay more or have bigger clutches. I'm assuming it has to do with, again, the size part, because some of those coastal animals get really, really big. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all know that so many animals have giant clutch sizes for success rate as babies. Right. I don't know if that pertains to California king snakes, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. What about because especially if there's going to be a species that this could fall in with some of the localities, it's going to be Cal Kings, because when I think California and Nevada and, their range, it's a massive range.
It is.
With a massive amount of differences in landscape and climate, really.
Yep.
And so do you have localities that tend to favor a little bit cooler and some that favor a little bit warmer and, things like that? Obviously, they probably all fall within the same range. It's just you tend to see that any locality, this one spends more time against the heat. This one spends more time on the cool side.
Yeah, so that is another great question. I treat the animals in terms of where they come from. So the desert animals, I always put higher in the room because of the ambient temperatures. Even though it might be only 2 degrees, maybe 4 degrees, the difference, I still put them. I organize them, not necessarily prioritize, but I organize them that way based on what I think about those ambient temperatures that they may be observing on a regular basis. And I also do the practice, and I don't know if it's an old school practice or if not, but it was what I was taught, was to put the males at the very lowest part of the room for preservation of. So you guys, not to call it old, but I think it's a good, safe practice.
Yeah, you see, yeah.
There's a little bit of salt in that pepper.
That's right. That's wisdom coming out of our face, Jerry. That's what that is, buddy.
Right. I don't use in my colubrid room because I have Latin American. I do Latin American locality milk snakes as well. That's another big one for me. In my colubrid room, I don't run any belly heat at all. It's all strictly ambient temperatures. And again, I run the males to the bottom. I learned the hard way, if you will, with a thermostat malfunction years and years ago. And then I was told, Jerry, you don't need to even keep those guys on belly heat. I'm an old rosy boa guy, so every rosy boa's always had to have belly heat. So I treated them the same way and let them thermoregulate and do their own thing. Well, come to find out, I didn't have to do that. So for now, I do base the desert animals, which are more tolerant or more oriented around some of those higher temperatures, and I have them at the top of the room. I don't know if that answers your question, Clint. It was kind of
yeah, it does. I mean, just basically kind of, do we keep them any different? And while it's a subtle difference, that would be my expectation, is that it would be a subtle difference from some of these localities. It's just, if there was going to be a species that there was going to be some. I think this is a prime example of a species because its range is so wide. Because it's kind of one of the more adaptable. Like, I compare that to black rat snakes, and I don't care whether we want to say eastern, western, whatever, with that now. But that covers such a wide range of habitat. They're highly adaptable, and so I think they're going to be fine. If you just kind of do the typical mid-range, whatever, as far as the temps. But I'm sure that there's going to be pockets of those localities that like it a little, 2 or 3 degrees warmer,
right?
2 or 3 degrees cooler, or 10% higher humidity, 10% lower humidity, and just across the board. So just curious.
I will tell you that a practice that I started this year, I did, being in East Tennessee and coming from the desert. So many of my founding animals came from the desert. I actually had to employ a dehumidifier in my room. I had no idea, and I'm like, this room is all closed. How could it possibly get this bad? And it made a huge difference just employing, and it's just a little $200 model, and I have it vented going out the window, and it's and then the hose that goes out to a drain system, and it amazes me how much water that thing pulls out of the ambient air.
Yeah, this is literally one of the things. I mean, I've said over and over on the shows that the room that we're currently upgrading is what we call the Southwest room, and we're doing it's our Pituophis, it's our Alterna, and
right.
I've struggled with some rosy boas, and so this is going to be for that.
Yeah.
But we're upgrading all the caging, and one of the things that we're doing in it, because I want everything to have more airflow. I don't want it in racks in there anymore. I want as much airflow as I can possibly get. Because where we're at, we're not super high humidity, we're not the rainforest. We are literally on the Ohio River, and it's
swamp, dude.
Yeah, it's and it's one of those things. It's funny because there's been times I've traveled other places, and they're like, yeah, here's the so and so river, and I'm like, that's a creek. The Ohio, it's the mighty Ohio. It's you're not swimming it. So. So the humidity levels here are higher, and that's one of the things in the Southwest room that we will be doing is a dehumidifier, because I want to make this if I'm calling it Southwest, it's got to have that vibe out there, because I want these animals I want to really increase our success rate with all of these, so trying to do all the steps possible. So.
Yeah, my Latin American locality milk snake room, it's a much smaller room, and I have 2 pairs of boa constrictors in there. One of my bucket list animals that I always wanted to have was the black devil boa constrictors, the pure black antlers, amazing animals. So I had this room originally for them, and I thought, I'm going to move the Latin American milk snakes into this room because I don't care about the humidity in there, right? Mm-hmm. And man, did it make a big difference for those guys too. Like they absolutely love it, because it's inherently a little bit warmer room because of giving the boa constrictors the heat that they need.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a little bit of an ambient temperature change in there, but I leave the window open, a screened window open, to let that humidity in, and those guys are like, oh, this feels like home. Yeah. It's made a big difference in their feeding, all that stuff. It's worked out great. So for you in doing that, what you're going to do with that dehumidifier, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised as what the results are for that.
Yeah. We both talked about that. Trans-Pecos rat snakes.
I was going to say, I kill subox constantly.
I tell people Trans-Pecos, Mojatophis comes here to die. That's what.
Yeah. Well, so me being a rosy boa guy and coming from Nevada, and I couldn't have them there. I came here and like, cool, I'm going to have rosies again. Well, I have the neonates that I have received that have been born in captivity do fine. Now, some of the desert animals have not. But the coastal animals, so I'm limiting myself on what I can have for that. What's doing very well right now is the El Rosario rosy boas, because again, though they're a desert animal, where they come from, they get this huge Pacific coast fog influence that comes in. And if you've ever been to that part of Baja, you wake up in the morning and you come outside and there's dew, just like what we experience here now in the morning. So they're seemingly used to it, whereas some of the hardcore desert animals, like the Dome Rock Mountain animals, stuff like that, they're like, this sucks. I don't want the monsoon season 24/7, so that's where that dehumidifier has come in handy again.
I feel strangely validated having someone from the West come to the East. And
doesn't it? What he's saying, I'm like, yes, this is what I've been thank you.
I'd heard it from other people that I know that are in Florida and about, especially in particular with rosy boas, and I'm like, yeah, but if they're in just a well-ventilated, it doesn't matter if they're ventilated or not. If the ambient humidity is 80-something%, like they're struggling no matter what. So anyway,
it took. I have oh my God, in my garage, because this year I was like, I will keep Pituophis in this house. Like that's what I really wanted, and I did so much nerding out. I was in the garage, literally with the garage door open. That's where a lot of the snakes are, besides this room. And I had my Gold Bond powder, and I'm like pushing the powder to see like where's the air going. Okay. And I realized when I didn't have the fans on, it was just like hanging right there in the middle of the room. And I was like, oh shit. So then I got these 3 fans, and my son, he knows you don't bump the fans. Like you can wreck the car, but you can't bump dad's fan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I have angled it all so that now when I do the like gold bond, boom, it goes right out the door. And now all those kind of things that like it to be a little drier, they're all doing fine.
Great.
And it's very easy to keep the other things that need to be humid where I'm at. I don't have a problem with the humidity. I just limited the number of air holes. So the Florida Kings are able to live next to the bulls, which are able to live next to the false water cobras. And it always makes me laugh as when you really get deep into herpetoculture. Like for me, that is my number one achievement of the year. It's not breeding musaranas, which I tried to do for 5 years. It was like literally figuring out the aerodynamics, whatever the hell, ventilation of my garage. Like no one else, only snake nerds care about this kind of stuff.
Right. That's true. Snake nerds being the operative. Yes, that's very perfect description. Snake nerds, because that's what we all are.
Yeah.
All right,
so,
Jerry, I got a quick Cali King question for you.
Sure.
From the crowd.
Okay.
So Timothy wants to know, is there a La Quinta locality of California king snake?
Yeah, so La Quinta, California is very close. They basically run together with Palm Springs, and La Quinta is a it's kind of in between Palm Springs and Indio for that part, and it's very eastern. It's at the foothills of the San Bernardino Mountains, and then the Oricopia Mountains go up and away from there. And then it goes into the San Jacinto Mountains, going back towards, as Zac mentioned before, Scissors Crossing. So all those ranges are all continuums. But to answer the question, La Quinta is a small area as part of the desert community way out east of Los Angeles. That particular, and he'll probably beat me up. Well, he won't beat me up. He loves me too much, but he'll beat me up verbally later about bringing in. Gary Kiesler is the one that actually has had the founding stock of the La Quinta locality. His company did all of the big lakes in that area out in Palm Springs and La Quinta area out there for all the golf courses that are out there. And one of his employees brought him the first La Quinta animal that was the naturally occurring, if you will, Newporter.
Nice.
It's black and white. He still actually has that original animal. I don't know how old that old dude is. He doesn't even try to breed them anymore. But and then they had found a normal banded animal close by, and that's the founding stock of what is out there currently right now. I breed those animals. Gary obviously still does. There's a lot of folks that breed those animals out there, but it is, in fact, a true locality animal.
So on that line, because this is exactly where I wanted to take this. So let's just talk about some of your favorite Cali King localities and maybe a gopher or two. Like if you were told you're only allowed to have 5 Cali King localities, what are the localities you're going to keep?
I'm in my old age, I'm getting softer and more. I love anything that has to do with my children, my family, and or my best friends that I spent time in the field with, right? So old sentimental guy. So first and foremost would be Davis, California, because my wife went to university there. She's in the vet community. So we spent a lot of time there. But I put out study sites and all that as I mentioned before, about looking for animals there. So that would be one of the biggest ones for sure. In terms of the gopher snakes, that would be the Vacaville animals. And the sentimental part behind that is, just so you know this, Zac, my uncle off the Cherry Glen Road, where that animal that you have from the founding stock came from, he was the inventor of the burpless cucumber, and he had greenhouses or hothouses. Nice. So I went there in the 60s and 70s as a kid to visit old Uncle Nick, and he had those greenhouses, and that's where those gopher snakes came from.
Nice. That's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, a little funny history thing. Other Cal King localities, I love because of the look, not necessarily of the actual sentimental reason, but Jawbone Canyon is a place that I spent a lot of time looking for rosy boas, and side note, never found one there. They have been found there by several people that I know. But those animals, in terms of a good representation of a good black and white banded animal, you can't beat those animals. I think they're one of the coolest ones. Again, I like to represent different looks from different animals from different areas. So, and then probably the scissors crossing animals, because that's such a cool stripe. I mean, that's one of the only places you can find that striped animal that's in the desert black and white colors. I mean, there's tons of striped animals on the coastal stuff, and I love all of them as well, but the scissors crossing stuff is super cool.
Yeah.
And then probably lastly would be where I grew up in Shasta County, just the regular old black and white narrow banded guys up there, because that's what I grew up finding. You know, it was one of those sentimental things. But the bull snakes, I will always have Kankakees, as you mentioned before, just because of going there and getting to see one in the wild. I just love the look of them. I like all the darker stuff like that anyway. Yeah. Just me.
No, the Kanks are great. I dove deep into them this time last year. I didn't I knew about the tricolors. Everybody knows about the tricolors.
Sure.
But I didn't realize that there was just a all black saddled version, like the Newton County, Indiana animals.
Yep.
And I bought a trio off of a guy. And when I got them, I was like, these are broken. They're not tricolors. Where's the red? What the hell is going on? And then I messaged him, and of course he schooled me in a good way. He was like, well, not all of them are tricolors. These are Newton County. And then this is a great story for why locality keeping and the herping piece means so much. So I went to the Kankakee region coming home from Iowa. We drive like below it.
Yep.
And if we were willing to drive 90 minutes north, we go right through it. And I was like, we're driving 90 minutes north, kids.
Sure.
Here we go. And my soon-to-be grad student, Christian Dietrich, who's selects snakes. He was at Colubrid Fest. He's a very avid herper. And props to Christian. He's having a banner year out in the field. But he goes to the Kankakee region fairly frequently. And it was like, I can help you find your bull snake. And we got one. My lifer Kankakee, the story behind it was crazy. We mentioned this once before. So we're in this garbage pit, basically. Very first site we went to, which was great. And we're flipping mattresses. We're flipping these nice big boards, like it's like beautiful. And I think it was Christian.
Only us snake nerds celebrate finding junk.
Yes. Oh my God.
We get excited, don't we?
So excited.
So excited. Yes.
He walked by the toilet, and then the toilet started roaring. Like if you picture a bull snake hissing out in the open, that's one thing. But a bull snake that's in a toilet hissing, it sounds like a damn beast from like hell. So we all stopped and we're like, what the hell is that? And then she popped her head out. And
so good.
The first bull Kankakee I got was one of those all black animals. And then in that moment, I was totally fine with having all black Kankakees.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So my holdback male this year, because I made a lot of them last year, I picked the one that was the darkest because of, that reminded me of the one that I saw out there. My son just happened to be with us on that trip. So it was just great.
That's awesome.
And then we got pictures and put her back. But yeah, I get the sentimental thing totally at this point in my life. Like 20-year-old Zac wouldn't really care about that sentimentality, but like being up in the mountains of Northern California, finding the Pacific gopher snakes with Clint and Kayla and Roy. And I knew like I didn't want any of the fancy ones. There's the toilet. That's it. I wanted just a nice looking Pacific gopher snake. And the fact that I got one from like you and met you and that was it. Like, that's it. That's what I want. That's that. You can see she's got a little bit of brown in the middle there, but not much.
That's a very handsome animal. Definitely.
Yes. I knew I had
he would grab it.
He
took pictures and put it right back. That was it. So
that's great.
I could tell you guys that if there's any time that we could ever plan, the three of us or whoever else wants to go, we want to go out and do some board flipping and catch other weird Cal Kings together and all that stuff. I'd love to take you guys out there and tromp around.
We would love it. We would love it.
We could have In-N-Out Burger at the same time too.
Boom. There you go.
Well, Jerry, if you've got places around Tennessee to find some nice stuff, we're always looking for everywhere. We want to herp all over the country. So
interestingly enough, I've been here. Denise and I have been here for 4 years now, and I've only purposely gone herping one time. Found a little road that I thought was going to be a really cool road, and got myself one of my favorite Nicaraguan cigars and had some junky tacos along the way. And went through this road, and I thought, well, all the farmers around here will have gone to bed, and I'm going to have this road all to myself. Nope, I was all wrong. There was traffic up and down it anyway. Still, and it traversed and paralleled the river, and I was like, oh, I can't. So the only things that I've seen just organically on the shoulder of the road going to and from wherever. And a lot of rescuing it. One of the coolest ones was seeing my first rough green snake. I straddled it, and I went, was that a green snake? Like, really? And turned around and went back, and sure enough, it was still there, and moved it off the road. Move a lot of box turtles, a lot of turtles, period, for that matter. But the first black rat snake that I saw that was a legitimate, in my mind, it probably wasn't, but a legitimate 8-foot animal. I was like, what is going on? How is this possible? It was a monster. When I first went by it, I was like, no way. I had to turn around and go back, because it was on the shoulder on the opposite side of the road. And sure enough, and it was, it displayed and hissed and did its thing. I'm like, no, it's all you. I'm just making sure you're not getting run over. But it was a monster. So I haven't purposely gone herping. We have a pond that's on our 20 acres. So I have the frogs that come and do that. And coming from the desert where you don't hear any of that stuff, like it's so joyous to me to go out there and sit out there. And Denise is like, could you shut the door already? Because it's
I believe it. Well,
I love it.
Obviously, there's so much stuff out in California that just, for Zac and I, we were whoa. But it, wasn't really until out there I'm realizing the rat snakes, that's definitely more here in the Midwest. That's our thing. And so, I mean, I can imagine how impressive, especially the size that they can get.
Oh my goodness.
How no that idea. Is. Yeah, absolutely. And with Zac talking about wanting that Pacific gopher, that was a snake that we flipped together.
Yep.
While out there. And it was funny the way that it played out. I mean, because I'll never forget that. It was, I'm bent down. I'm about to lift this board. We had found a few other things in the area, and Zac's ready to grab, if we find something. And we both, I don't remember which one of us said this, but we go, come on, pitch you opus. Because come on, pitch you opus. That's what we were after at this point. And whoom, and get it.
Yeah.
Got one of those. So that's got a special place for the both of us at that point, because it was the first one that it was just he and I over there. Everybody else was doing stuff else, and that's we flipped that. And,
perfect. I have a real quick
get to see at the same time. Yeah,
I have a real quick story that's a lot like that. I took my friend Tom Green. He's a gray band / Zanata guy, and him and I. He's the reason my wife and I met. Anyway, love him to death. He's like another brother. Anyway, we were going to go spend some time over in Central California in my board spots, and we were driving on one of the roads that goes to it, and there was a fallen address sign on the shoulder of the road, and I go by it, and I go, in my head, I go, that looked pretty good. And I turn around, and he goes, what are you doing? So I'm turning around. I pull over on the shoulder. I go, see that board up there? Go get that gopher snake out from underneath that board. And he says, F you, come on, really? Like, sure enough, man, he went and flipped that board over, and there was a 3-foot gopher snake under it. And he's same thing. Did you put that there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I love it. Yeah. I was just being an idiot, just to call my shot. Sure, that's going to happen. Sure enough.
You know what? I did the same thing once, actually. We were going fishing, me and a buddy that I used to work with, and there was a couch on the side of this dirt road that we're going down to get to this lake. And I stopped and I go, there's going to be snakes under there. It's going to be some black racers, guaranteed. Because it was hot. Times peak summer. And I guarantee it. And sure enough, knocked this thing over. And there wasn't only a pair of black racers. They were mating.
Yeah.
Whenever we go, I told you. Oh, it's very good stuff.
So is there a locality of king or gopher or rosy boa that like haunts you, that you wanted to go and find, and it was just like I got to get this one to complete whatever field experience, and you didn't.
So to answer your question, my nemesis in the old Rosie days was, in fact, Baghdad, because of that damn road from that copper mine. Only ever found one, and it was a roadkill animal. And I saw a lot of really neat animals there, but that's always been my Rosie nemesis. In terms of the Cow Kings, obviously Scissors Crossing. That's just one that'll never happen, because even though I go out there once a year isn't gonna. You got to spend a lot of windshield time there. One of the other OGs that's of that area, Brian McGurty, he's probably seen more time on that road than anybody, and he has found more of the animals. In fact, my breeding stock that I have is actually from him, because I wouldn't trust getting them from anybody else. And so the animals that I have are animals that he, as he says, picked up off the road. So very cool. But yeah, that's one that it'd be super neat to find. The closest I ever came was with my buddy Tony Lonzi, another amazing person on this planet, one of my favorite people. Found a just freshly hit .-1 on that. Yeah, we were doing what was called ARC. We used to call it, I had started a thing back in the day called the Annual Rosie Club, and we'd get people from all over to meet in places like Anza-Borrego or out in Palm Springs, and it was everybody pile in, kind of like what you guys did with the Kluber Fest with the hotel and all the snake folks stay there. Well, we'd do that same thing, and then everybody would go out herping and then meet back at the pool the next day and share stories. Well, we were doing one of the ARCs, and that's what happened. Found that animal, and everybody got, took it back. Tony took it back to the hotel. Everybody photographed it and all that, because that's a super, super rare find. And of course, we missed it by seconds. So, yeah.
Oh, man.
Nice.
Well, very cool. Very, very cool.
That's good stuff.
Well, I want to ask, we don't want to keep you too long, so we try to hold this to about 2 hours. But I'm very curious, since you've been in herpetoculture for a while, and you're still here. Where do you see herpetoculture going in the future? Do you like what you're seeing? Do you not like what you're seeing? Social media good, social media bad, the show scene?
I've seen so much evolution in terms of just the social media part. So I'm glad to see that there isn't as many keyboard warriors as there used to be around all the, I think that it's a small, even though there's tens of thousands of us, is still a small enough community that people understand and know each other's names, right? So I would ask all my fellow herpers and all those folks out there to keep all that kind of nonsense out of it. Like, there's no place for it, right? We're all sharing the same interests, love the same things, and not that I'm holier than thou. I'm not up on a soapbox right now. I just don't. When there's that kind of negativity around the egos involved. And again, I will tell you guys, that's another thing that you guys preached at the Kluber Fest about. No egos, none of that kind of stuff is, I don't want to say tolerated. That's a pretty rough word, but anyway, I would like to see that part of it. And I feel like that it has gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. I think that folks are finally realizing that there's no gain in that, right?
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I would love to see things like the Kluber Fest or the celebration thereof that continue to grow in terms of educating folks on that there is so many other cool things out there that people really don't know about. I learned so much just from a couple of the talks, to include what's the name of the snake where it goes in and burrows in and all kinds of bad things happen. It's like a nightmare. What's the
parasite?
The what?
The parasite?
No, it was the it's a feeding thing that went on with one of the snakes. I think it starts with a Z. What's some of the weird names of the snakes that were some of the Kluber stuff that nobody knew about?
The kukri snakes that eat the guts out of the toads.
Yes.
Yes.
Like there's still so much to learn out there, and I'm glad to see that that's what you guys have that going. So I love that part of it. Again, I'm not in no way, shape, or form bashing on anybody that does ball pythons or leopard geckos and all that stuff. I would just like to see that folks get more educated that are out there that only think that that's the thing that there is out there in the herp world. And I like to include amphibians. I like to include all of the arachnids. I like it all, right? So when I go to a show, don't get me wrong, I love seeing all the ball pythons because I'm blown away as to what there was compared to when I was a young man, and there was just normal ones, right? Like that's all there was, and I was happy to have one of those. And same with the corn snake, same with there's so many amazing animals out there. I'm just very thankful that you guys are doing what you're doing to get the diversity of the herp community out there. So I think it's going in the right direction, and I especially don't want to seem or sound like that I'm preaching or anything, but I think folks just need to be a little more open-minded and learn more. Their fellow herpers, read more books. I mean, books are still a cool thing out there as far as I'm concerned. I'm looking so forward to Craig's Pituophis book coming out. I can't.
I think everybody on this show right now can say
I already got him booked.
Yeah.
That's
when
so
it comes out, he's coming on the show.
That's so cool. Yeah.
That is my new Bible when it lands.
Yes. Yep. They say anybody can write a book, and that is true. That doesn't mean that the contents are good. That's the way it is. But I don't want to say anything more in terms of any kind of negative thing about the herp community, because it is what it is, and it's going to continue to grow and evolve, and I think it's going to get better. Because there is more folks that are doing more of the like you guys doing more of the educational part of it out there, not just about what's in a deli cup. And for me to be able to present being out in the field the way that you let me just talk about that and random stuff is just I think more people need to experience that. Get a cactus in your side of your leg, get a tick on your right butt cheek, get all those things that come along with the field, live that stuff. That's what I want people to do more, but respect it. Put the rock back where you found it. There I go preaching again. I said I wasn't going to preach.
That's the way to do it, though. Yes, 100%.
Put the log back where you found all those things. Those animals need and not codepend. They solely depend upon that stuff to be put back right. So, I always tell people when I've coached people on that before, like, could you imagine somebody coming and lifting the roof off of your house and then setting it crooked? How bad would your life be then? Like that's a terrible thing to do. So take the time to put it back, and slow down when you're doing it too. Enjoy the flowers, the everything, the jumping spider that just landed on you, all that. Who cares? All good stuff.
I've actually found in my 40s, I find more animals than I did when I was in my 20s. And the number one difference is now I'm just happy to be outside. I'm not sitting at a computer. I'm not creating a paper, and that like slowing down and being more present. It just gives you more situational awareness. I watch my students, like especially the undergrads, not so much the grad students, but they hit the ground and they're like coked up beagles, man. They just boom, explode, and they're running around. And I'm just kind of moping around the old guy, walking down through, and they're flushing everything. And since I'm actually like paying attention, I'm the one catching everything. So
absolutely,
it's definitely taught me a lot about like, there's something to be said about just chilling out, pacing it, be more aware, more present. You'll find more stuff.
Yep.
That's simple.
Very cool.
All right. Fantastic.
Well, this was fantastic.
Before you send us out, because there's one individual at this shop that he's the one who puts CCR on television every morning. He's listening to every episode. He watches every episode. And that's Landon, who's here in the Chandler location. And I know he has listened to this entire episode. And so before we go, I'm going to tell you, happy birthday, Landon.
Happy
Thanks
birthday,
for everything
Landon.
you do, buddy.
Happy birthday,
Thanks,
Landon.
guys.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. And yeah, so if people want to find you, Jerry, to talk Locality Kings or maybe pick up an animal from you, how do you recommend people get a hold of you?
I do have a Facebook page. It's called Pure Locality Herps. And I think, man, I'm a terrible host. I think that it should have my email address on there. But hell, just go on to Facebook, and you've been messaging me all day. Go on to Facebook and hit Messenger. I'm always, anybody I can geek out with, I can. So I'll be there, answer any questions, give you any kind of information I can provide. If not, I could probably point you to somebody that can provide that information. So.
All right. Well, thank you so very much for coming on. We will have you on again if you're willing to come on.
Absolutely. And thank you again so much for inviting me. I can't wait for Colubrid Fest again next year. Denise and I are making plans, and yeah, it's going to be a good time. I've been telling everybody that they need to attend or vend or both. And I've been a cheerleader. So
we will take you on as a cheerleader.
Absolutely. Right. We greatly appreciate that.
All right. Yep. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, sure. So, Clint,
thanks, Sledge.
Where can people find you?
You can find me at Metazotics@gmail.com. You can check out anything that we have available, whether it's animal supplies, habitats, all that fun stuff at Metazotics.com. If you check anything out on that, then please use coupon code CCRadio at checkout to save yourself 5%. You can also find us at Metazotics on Facebook, MetazoticsLLC on Instagram.
All righty. Before we talk about how you find me, I want to thank, and I will be doing this again at the beginning of the next episode. I want to thank East Bay Vivarium, that popped up a lot in this particular episode. Alex, specifically at EBV, he reached out to me through Lucas, my former grad student, friend of the show, and they want to contribute to our conservation fund. So what they are doing is they are auctioning off, it's very appropriate, an adult female hognose snake, and the proceeds of that auction they're going to give to the CCR Conservation Corps. And if this works out well, they said there will be multiple auctions in the name of conservation. So if you're in the market for an adult female hog, look that particular auction up. I think it's on Morph Market, if I'm not mistaken, and bid on it, because you can help us out and get a nice snake, in the end. So there's that. And if you want to get a hold of me, Dr. Crawdad on Instagram, Zac Loughman on Facebook. Students, undergrads, if you're listening to this and you're in high school, I want you to come to my program if you just listen to a locality show for 2 hours and 7 minutes. So for that being said, please reach out to me through instant messenger, through whatever mechanism you have, and I will be happy. We've got a couple people, actually, young bucks, coming in to do a tour of West Liberty, and that just makes my heart go pitter-patter. So by all means, if you're on the fence, just do it. Just do it. So with that being said, be it evening, morning, night, or day, whatever time of day it is, have a good one, and we will see you on the next episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.